Masechet Zevaḥim Daf Chaf Zayin. Yesterday we learned in the Mishnah that if a Kohen places the blood of a Korban on the Mizbeach but in the wrong spot, if it was supposed to be above and he put it below or the other way around, or he put it on the ramp or other cases, then it's Pasul. Now what does that mean, Pasul? We're going to see a couple of opinions today, but we already saw the opinion of Shemuel, who limits it and says, Pasul Basar. It just means that the meat is you're not allowed to consume, but the Korban itself is kosher, and the owners who brought it have fulfilled their atonement. They will not have to bring another one. Pasul just means that the meat cannot be eaten. We explained Shemuel based on this pasuk, Vanina tativ lachem al hamizbeach lechaper. As long as it's somewhere on the mizbeach, it will atone. And we concluded that according to Shemuel, shelobim komo kim komo. Even if it's not in the right place, it's as if it's in the right place. And that's why Shemuel says that the korban is still a valid korban. Now we're going to challenge this opinion from a baraita. Me'tibe. Chisheb li tenetani tani lema'la lemata lemata lema'la le'altar kasher chazar v'chishev chusim komo pasul ve'en bo karet chusis mano pigul v'chaybin alav karet. This baraita has two parts. Here's part one. If a Kohen was doing one of the avodot of the korban, and he had in mind that he is going to sprinkle the blood that's supposed to be above, he's going to put it in the wrong place, going to put it below. Or it's supposed to be below, and he puts it above. Now, if he intends that he's going to do the sprinkling that same day, which he's supposed to be doing, so there's no problem of pigul here, there's only one problem, that he's thinking to put it in the wrong place, then the korban is kasher. We saw, according to Shemuel, even if he actually puts it in the wrong place, it's kasher. So certainly, if he does shechita, having in mind he's going to put it in the wrong place, kasher. Now, if, let's say he did shechita, having in mind just he's going to put it above the line or below the line. But then, in the next item that he did, let's say Kabbalah, he then had another bad thought, and he thought he's going to do it chuslim komo, meaning not in the designated area at all, not on the mizbeach at all, not in the temple courtyard. So he's going to do the consumption of it. He's going to eat it or do something not in the right place. Then it becomes pasul, meaning disqualified altogether for a korban. Although there's no karet, because that's true in general. And any time, general korban, pigul only applies to having wrong intent regarding time, not place. So he's having intent. The first intent of the wrong place is on the mizbech, just the wrong spot on the mizbech. That's not such a big deal. So it's still kosher. But then the next thing he does, he has in mind, not even on the mizbeach, not in the courtyard. He's going to eat it not in the courtyard if it's kodesh kodeshim or whatever the outside the place is for that thing. Then it's pasul. There's no karet because it's not pigul. If he has in mind for the second thing that he does, like Kabbalah, that's going to be chutzis mano. That he's going to consume it after the time, after the deadline. Then it is pigul, and one is liable to karet because it's pigul. So the point of these two last phrases is that we treat the korban like any other korban, even though in the first thing that he did, let's say shechita, he had in mind to put it below the line. It's supposed to be above the line, or the other way around. Even though that's not a very good thing to do, but it's kosher. And therefore, since it's kosher, so the next step, whatever would have happened to any korban, chusim komo is pasul, chutzis mano is pigul, and chayav karet. This is in contrast with the second half of the baraita. Lemachar, if he has in mind, let's say he's doing shechita, and he has in mind he's going to do zirika in the wrong place, meaning above the line or below the line, and he's going to do it tomorrow. So now he has two problems. Pasul, now it's no good. Chazar v'chisheb, ben chutzis mano, ben chutzim komo, pasul ve'en bo karet. If when he does one of the next avodot, say Kabbalah, he has in mind that he's going to do this. He's going to do the sprinkling at the wrong time, or in the wrong place, or any consumption in the wrong time or the wrong place. Then it's pasul and there is no karet. What is the difference here? The difference is that in that first thing that he does, since he has two negative thoughts. So it's not going to be pigul. Even in the first thing that he does, shechita, he's having in mind tomorrow, and it's disqualified tomorrow. It's something that has to be done today. So it's not pigul because he also has another problematic thought. And the law of pigul is it's only pigul and liable to karet if that's the only problem that you had in mind, that you're going to consume it after the time. But if there's another problem also, then it doesn't get the law of pigul. Therefore, when he thinks, I'm going to put it in the wrong spot, that's problem number one. Pigul, outside the time is problem number two. Therefore, it's not pigul. Even though it's not pigul and liable to karet, nevertheless, he did have in mind outside the time, so it's already pasul. Now, when it comes to the next thing that he does, it doesn't matter whether the next thing that he does, the next action, Kabbalah, he has in mind chus mano chusim komo. He's not going to get karet now because it's already not pigul. There's already other problems with it, and so it remains pasul, but there is no karet. Now that's the end of the braita. Here's the question: if putting it in the wrong place is like putting it in the right place, meaning above the line, below the line, yes, the chitechila, you should put it in the right place. But if you didn't, we just said, according to Shemuel, not in the right place, as long as on the mizbech, it's the same, it's okay. And it can, and you get atonement for it. If so, then in this case where he did the shechita, the first action that he did, and he had in mind in the wrong place and tomorrow, then it should be pigul, because in the wrong place doesn't do anything. You said that's kosher. So there's nothing wrong with having in mind that I'm going to put it above the line, and therefore the only problem is that you're doing it at the wrong time, so it should be pigul. Amar mozutra zirika de sharia basar ba'achila ma'ita lidei pigul. Zirika de la sharia basar ba'achila la ma'ita lidei pigul. Mozutra explains that if the zirika would permit it totally, not only for atonement, but also to make it permitted to eat the flesh, to consume it, then that thought of zirika at the wrong time will make it pigul. But in this case, since he already had in mind that he's going to do zirika in the wrong place, and therefore, while he's doing shechita, he's having that in mind, therefore that zirika will not permit the food to be eaten, the sacrificial flesh to be consumed, not by the mizbech or not by him. And therefore, even though, yes, it does atone for him, but that zirika is not 100%, and therefore it will not make it pigul when he has in mind at the time of shechita that he's going to sprinkle it in the wrong place and at the wrong time. That's not going to be pigul because it's not going to be 100% zirika. Even though, yes, it's a valid korban, but pigul is only if there's no other problem at all with the zirika that will end up happening. Amar le Rav Asher le Mozutra. Mina lacha. Rav Asher es Mozutra. How do you know this? And the answer is dichtib. V'im he'achol yachel mi besar zebach shelamav pigul yihiyeh. The pasuk says, if any of the flesh shall be eaten, shall be consumed on the third day after it's past the time, it shall not be accepted. It shall be pigul. So you see here that it's supposed to be eaten. Misha pigulo garam lo. Yasa zeh she'en pigulo garam lo. Ela isur davar acher garam lo. So you see here that this, when does it become pigul and yuchayav karet? Only if the pigul, the thought of the wrong time, is the only cause, but we exclude anything where it's not only the pigul, the thought of the wrong time, that's causing a problem, but a different isur. And here there is a different isur, although the korban is valid because chusim komo is kim komo, but it's not 100% valid for eating. You won't be able to consume it. And therefore, even that problem is sufficient to remove the possibility of it becoming pigul. We ask now, if this is true, that it doesn't become pigul, then why in the second half of the braita, why does it become pasul at all? Again, he does shechita having in mind that he's going to do the zirika below the red line when it's supposed to be above, and also at the wrong time. Well, you just told me that it's not pigul. So, because there's another issue with it that you can't eat it. But, okay, so fine, there's no pigul. Take that off. So what do you have left? That it's going to put it in the wrong place. But having in mind to put it in the wrong place does not make it pasul. It should be kosher. So therefore, why are you saying it's pasul at all? Why not say it's totally kosher? It should be a valid korban. Okay, even if you can't eat it. But it should be a valid korban and serve as atonement. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak midi dehava machshevet hinuach v'aliba de Rabbi Yehuda. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak explains that this case is similar to a case where when one does shechita, one has in mind he's going to leave the blood till the next day. He's just not going to sprinkle it today. This is not the classic case of pigul, because pigul is where I have in mind when I do shechita that I'm going to do the sprinkling tomorrow. That's pigul chayav karet. But here he didn't have in mind he's going to sprinkle tomorrow. He just had in mind, I'm going to leave it over for tomorrow. I'm just not going to do anything today. Hinuach. And according to the Rabbi Yehuda, that case, although it's not pigul, not chayav karet, because he didn't have in mind that he's going to sprinkle tomorrow, nevertheless, he still had in mind that he's not going to sprinkle today. And therefore, it will be an invalid korban, although there is no karet. We can apply a similar result here, because he said that he's going to put it above the line or below the line, so now it's not going to be edible. Because you have that problem, now it's not going to be pigul. Okay, because in order for it to be pigul, it has to be no other problem at all. Fine, it's not pigul, not chayav karet. Nevertheless, he did have in mind that he's going to sprinkle tomorrow. And so, although there is a bit of a different problem, so it's not 100%, it's not officially pigul with chayav karet, nevertheless, we can still apply this result that the korban will be invalid, and so that explains the baraita. ריש לקיש אמר לעולם פסול ממש, ושלא במקומו כמקומו דמה, ולקשיא, כאן שנתן בשתיקה, כאן שנתן באמירה. ריש לקיש has a different interpretation of our Mishnah, and he thinks that when our Mishnah says that if the Kohen sprinkled the blood in the wrong place on the Mizbeach, that is pasul, that means totally pasul. Pasul to consume it, and the korban is unfit and will not achieve atonement. Now, Rish Lakish will still have to explain that pasuk that was brought earlier, and he will have to. He therefore agrees with Shemuel that in principle, putting it in the wrong place is like putting it in the right place. Now, therefore, you're going to ask, well, if putting it in the wrong place is like the right place and it's okay, then why are you saying pasul mamash? So there's no challenge here. When we say shalom komo kim komo, that's if he places it above the line or below the line in the wrong place without saying anything, without any other problematic thought, then that would be okay. But Kan, our Mishnah that says pasul, and that's pasul mamash, that's when he says a statement, in addition to putting it in the wrong spot, he also has in mind and says a statement that he's going to consume it after the deadline. And so he added another problem. That's why, because he added another problem, that's why it's totally pasul. That's the case that this Mishnah is talking about. And therefore, since Resh Lakish says in principle, Shelo b'mkomo kim komo, we're going to ask Resh Lakish all the questions that we just asked Shemuel. And the Gemara is not going to bother listing all the questions and the answers that we just went through, so it just says it in shorthand. Tenan, chisheb li tena tani tani, lemata, lema'la, lema'la, lemata ad, midi dehava machshevet hinuach v'adibad Rabbi Yehuda v'chule. And so, because Shakish does agree with Shemuel about that, we could ask him all the same things about it. If so, that not in the places there is the same as in the right place, we ask him all the questions, we answer the same answers, and so you could just look up there and see all the questions and answers, and we'll answer them the same way. Now we have a third interpretation. Rabbi Yochanan amar idi v'idi shenatan bishtika. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, where are you getting this from that you're adding in that he had in mind, he didn't have in mind, he did have in mind? You're saying our Mishnah is when he also had in mind, and it's going to be in the wrong place. It doesn't say so in our Mishnah, and so therefore Rabbi Yochanan says, no, our Mishnah is talking about a case where he put it in the wrong place. That's all he did. He didn't have anything else in mind, the Kohen. And the other Mishnah in Daf 32 that we brought up yesterday, that Mishnah says that if you put it in the wrong place if there is still blood, dama nefesh, that's squirting out of the neck of the animal, you could go run back and get more. A proper kohen can run back and get more and do it again. So over there, it sounds like you can do it again. So Rabbi Yochanan says, both of these, you had no other problematic thought in mind. Rabbi Yochanan thinks that putting in the wrong place is not like putting in the right place. If you put it in the wrong place, then that's it. It's no good. So what can explain the difference between the two Mishnayot? Simple. One case, there was more blood squirting out, life blood. That's the Mishnah on Daf 32. And that's why, okay, you sprinkled in the wrong place, but there's still more blood. So go, run and get more blood, bring it, put it in the right place, and then the sacrifice will be saved. Whereas our Mishnah above is talking about a case where there is no more blood coming out. So that's it. You took the blood, you put it in the wrong place. So now that's a bad sprinkling. There's no more blood to do a good sprinkling. So therefore, the korban does not achieve atonement at all. We do not say the wrong place is like the right place. Tenan, pasul ve'en bo karet. The Mishnah above says that when you do zirika and you put the blood in the wrong place, then it's pasul, but there's no karet, there's no problem of pigul. Now, why would you think there would be karet, that there would be a problem of pigul? So this makes sense. Remember, Resh Lakish said that our Mishnah is talking about a case where not only did you put it in the wrong place, you also had in mind when you were doing zirika that you're going to consume it at the wrong time. So therefore, you might think, well, then that should be karet because you have in mind you're going to consume it at the wrong time. However, since you're also doing it in the wrong place, so there's another problem. Therefore, there is no karet, but you are having in mind that it's going to be at the wrong time. So it is pasul. So that's why we would say pasul, and yet there is no karet. So that makes sense that the Mishnah needs to say that for Rabbi Resh Lakish, because you are having in mind also it's the wrong time. El Rabbi Yochanan, mai en bo karet kashya. But according to Rabbi Yochanan, he said that the Mishnah is talking about a case where you just put it in the wrong place and had no other bad thought in mind. You never thought about doing anything at the wrong time. And he said that putting it in the wrong place is not like putting it in the right place, and there's no other blood, and that's why it's pasul. But why would you even think that it might be karet? So according to Rabbi Yochanan, there's no need for the Mishnah to say, oh, it's not going to be pigul. You didn't have anything in mind about doing the wrong time. So we leave that as a question. V'lishmuel mai en bo karet. Now, according to Shemuel, why does he say en bo karet? Hachika amar im natan b'machshava pasul ve'en bo karet. What it means that if also you had the wrong thought, Shemuel doesn't think that the Mishnah is saying that you had the wrong thought. Shemuel thinks actually it's not a problem that the korban is kosher korban. It's valid. You put it in the wrong place, but putting it in the wrong place is like the right place. So you can't eat it, but it's a valid korban. Now, so if you didn't have any problematic thought, why would you think it would be karet? So what Shmuel means to say is, and even if you would have improper intention, still then it would be pasul ve'en bo karet, still would not have karet, because the sprinkling that would be done would not be 100% sprinkling, because it would not allow the people to consume the flesh. And so therefore, it's not going to be pigul. So that's why it's adding that line that, and if there was wrong machshava, still it would not be karet. Rabbi Yochanan, ish shelo b'mkomo lav kimkomo dameh leve ki nishpach min hakeli al rispa v'yasfenu. Now another question against Rabbi Yochanan. If putting it in the wrong spot is not like putting it in the right spot, so now he put it in some wrong spot on the mizbeach. Now, that's not the right spot. So therefore, why don't we treat it like as if it fell from the kli onto the floor, and you can gather it again. Since it's the wrong spot, so just say, make believe nothing happened. Why do you have to say, oh, if there's still blood squirting out of the neck, go get more blood, and then you could do it again? Why do I have to get more blood? I had blood in the basin. The law is that once the blood is in the basin, if it falls on the floor, I could scoop it back up and still use it. So say the same thing. It fell on the bottom side. I was supposed to put it on the top. Okay, just say it's like I put it on the floor. Scoop it back up and then put it on top. Sabala keman damar lo yasfenu. Rabbi Yochanan follows the Tanaitic opinion that says that you cannot gather things up. Damar Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef amar Rabbi Yochanan hakom modim nitanin lema'ala shenetanan lema'ala. למטה שנתנן למטה, שלא כמצוותן לא יאספנו. לא נחלקו אלא בניתנין למעלה שנתנן למטה, למטה שנתנן למעלה. שרבי יוסי אומר, לא יאספנו, ורבי שמעון אומר, יאספנו. We have in this about this statement of Rabbi Yochanan explaining the machloket between two Tanaim. Says, everyone agrees that if it was supposed to be above and you put it above, or it was supposed to be below and you put it below, but you did it with some other problem, something else that you did wrong, like you did it with your left hand, you cannot gather it again because that's not called falling on the floor. You put it in the right place. So now you better get more blood. You can't use that blood. But there is a machloket where if you put it in the wrong spot, it was supposed to be above and you put it below, or below and you put it's supposed to be below and you put it above. There, the Biose says you cannot gather it again. So the Yochanan will follow that opinion that says, once you put it, even if it's in the wrong spot, you can't gather it again. Now the Shimon disagrees and he thinks that one can gather it again. Our Mishnah is following the opinion that says one cannot gather it again, and that's why, according to Rabbi Yochanan, one cannot gather it again. Now there is another interpretation of this machloket, and that is what comes next. ורב חיסדא אמר אבימי, הכל מודין בניתנין למטה שנתנן למעלה שלא יאספנו, וכל שכן בניתנין למעלה שנתנן למטה, הואיל ודמים עליונים למטה הן באין. Rav Chisda says in the name of Avimi, everybody agrees, both Tanaim agree that if it was supposed to be put below and the Kohen put the blood above, that you cannot gather it together. And all the more so if it was supposed to be put above the red line and you placed it below, also it cannot be gathered. And that's all the more so true because generally, if you put something on top, it will end up dripping down. That blood will drip down from the top to the bottom. So will reach the bottom anyway. So in some sense, the bottom is the right place, even for blood that's placed on top. So the point is that, you put it on the Mizbeach. It's not going to be, it's not going to achieve everything that you want it to be. It's going to be pasul to some extent. According to Rabbi Yochanan, it's going to be pasul totally. And there will not be a korban. It will not be fit. It will not achieve atonement. Nevertheless, placing it on the mizbeach, even in the wrong place, is not like putting it on the floor. On the floor, you can gather it back up. But now you put it on the mizbeach, and the mizbeach, in some sense, is the right place. And therefore, you cannot take it back off. And certainly not if you put it on top, where if it would fall if you put it on bottom and it was supposed to be on top, where if you put it on top, it will still fall to the bottom. So the bottom is, in some sense, the right place for it. So it's not like putting it on the floor. And everybody agrees about that. לא נחלקו אלא בניתנין לפנים, שנתנן בחוץ שנתנן לפנים, שרבי יוסי אומר יאספנו, רבי שמעון אומר לא יאספנו. The machloket only is if it was supposed to be put on the inside of the hechal, like on the mizbach zahav, and instead the Kohen put it on the outside mizbech, or it's supposed to be on the outside mizbech and put it on the inside mizbech. In that case, Rabbi Yosef says you can gather it again. It's totally the wrong place, totally wrong mizbeach altogether. So therefore, that's like it's on the floor, and you can gather it back up again. And Rabbi Shimon says in that case that he cannot. Interestingly, in this version, Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Shimon are switched. Here, Rabbi Yosef is the one that says lo yasfenu, and here Rabbi Yosef says yasfenu. Okay. In any case, they're not arguing at all. In the case where it's above and below the red line, that one cannot gather it up. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, af anan name tanena. Now we're going to bring a long baraita that is going to prove the same point that Rabbi Yochanan just said, that you cannot gather up blood if that's put on the mizbeach. It's not like it's putting it on the floor. And the proof is going to be from the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who we start off with. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Zot hi ha'olah. This pasuk, we're going to quote, let's quote the whole pasuk in Parashat Sav. Savit Aharon v'etbanav damor. Zot torat ha'olah hi ha'olah, al mokedah, al mizbeach, kol ha'layla, ad ha'boker, ve'esh ha'mizbeach tukad bo. So you see a number of words here that are going to be important. Zot, a limiting word. Torat ha'olah. So this is some kind of law about the olah, and it says hi ha'olah. So let's see what we learn from this. Rabbi Yehuda says zot and he and ha'olah. Hare elu miutin. These are all limiting words. Zot, only this. He, this, and not something else. Ha'olah, he'idiyah, this, the olah, and not something else. This teaches that in order for the parts of the korban olah to be placed on the mizbech in the right way, it has to be a good korban. so that you take all the limbs and you put them on the fire on the mizbech and you leave them there. But what if there's something wrong with the korban? Can you put them up there? No, you cannot. Everybody would agree you can't put them up there. Lechatechila. What if they already are up there? Can you leave them there? Let's see. According to Yehuda, these three limiting words come to exclude certain cases. Perat l'shechita balayla. If you did shechita on the korban at night, no good. The shechita, all activity of korban has to be done during the day. The major four activities has to be done during the day. You did shechita at night, then and then later on, you put the parts on the mizbech, no good, take them down. If the blood was spilled on the floor, and that's it, you don't have the blood, it wasn't properly sprinkled, so you didn't do the basic things. Spilled on the floor, no good. If you take the parts of the animal and put them on the mizbech, you got to take them down. And also, if the blood was taken outside of the temple courtyard, and then brought back in, no good. Outside of the curtains of the temple courtyard, then it's no good. And even if you brought it back in, that dam is invalid, and therefore the korban is invalid. And if you put the parts of the korban up on the mizbeach, you actually have to bring them down. Okay, the proof is going to be from this line of this part of Yehuda, who says that if it falls on the floor, then it's invalid. But that means, let's say you didn't fall on the floor. Let's say the blood was sprinkled on the mizbeach, but in the wrong place. In that case, he would not say to bring it down. He doesn't say anything about that. So why? Not because it's the right place, but rather because you put it on the mizbeach. So therefore, it's something. It's not like putting it on the floor that makes it totally not good. And I was talking about where you didn't gather it back up. You just spilled it on the floor. So now you don't have any blood to use for the sprinkling. That for sure is not good at all. But if you sprinkled it, but on the wrong place on the mizbeach, even though it's pasul, nevertheless you can leave the parts of the animal up there. The point is that by putting it on the mizbech is not the same as putting it on the floor. If it was the same as putting it on the floor, then you could gather it back up and then still use it. But over here, since he doesn't talk about this case of putting it on the mizbeach, it means that if it's put on the mizbeach, it's not like putting it on the floor. It's on the mizbeach. Okay, so then it's not the same as putting it on the floor. If on the floor, you could gather it back up. If you put it on the mizbeach, you cannot gather it back up. It's still not going to make it a valid korban. It's still pasul, but it's sufficient enough that you wouldn't have to take the items down. Okay, this proof is solidified by the contrast with the next opinion. Rabbi Shimon omed ola enli ela ola keshera. Rabbi Shimon says, the pasuk says ola, you take all the parts of the animal and you put it on the mizbech and they burn on the mizbeach. That's if the ola is totally kosher. But what if it's not? How do you know that in the following cases you still can leave it up? We're going to say about all these cases that if you put them up, the next cases are problematic. Lechatechila, you shouldn't put the pieces on the mizbeach. But if you did put those evadim on the mizbeach, you don't bring them down. So first let's list all the cases, and then he'll bring the proof why you can leave them up. So how do we know that we're going to include also something that you did shechita at night? Okay, you're not supposed to do shechita at night, but if you did, and then you did put the evadim on the mizbeach, you don't bring them down. And also, if the blood was spilled on the floor and gone, or if the blood went out of the curtains, or if it stayed overnight, or if the sacrifice itself went out of the temple courtyard, or became tameh, or the person that did the shechita had in mind for it to be out in the wrong time or in the wrong place. Or if he sprinkled the blood above, it was supposed to be above and he put it below, or it was supposed to be below and he put it above, or he put it on the inside mizbeach and it was supposed to be on the outside, or he put it on the outside and it was supposed to be sprinkled somewhere in the hechal, or if it was a korban pesach and korban chatat, and he had in mind for a different type of korban. So all these are problematic korbanot. But how do you know that if you did b'diavad put the parts of that animal on the mizbeach, still you can leave them there? Talmud Omar, Torah ta'ola riba Torah achat lechol ha'olin shimalu lo yerdu. Because it says Torah doesn't only say the word ola, it says Torah ta'ola, the law of the ola, And this teaches that there's one law for all of them, which means just like if the kosher one you put up there and you leave it there, so too, although these are problematic, b'diavad, once you put it up on the mizbeach, you don't have to bring it down. Now, is that going to include every problematic korban? It will include also one that was involved in bestiality, or it was involved in, it was set aside for avodah zarah, or it was actually served as an avodah zarah, or it was used to pay a prostitute or to exchange of a dog, or if it was kilayim, it's prohibited because it was the product of mixed breeds, or if the animal was taref, or if it was born out of a C-section, cannot be a korban, has to be born normally to be a korban. In all these cases, the Torah says the word zot, which is a limiting word. This can be a proper korban olah, and these things that are not a proper korban olah, even if you put them, on the mizbech, you have to go up and bring it down. Now we wonder, why do you include some and not others? How come some you say you have to bring it down, and some say you don't have to bring it down? I will include those things that became pasul in sanctity. In other words, the animal itself, there was nothing wrong with it. It was a proper animal. You brought it, and then the Kohanim messed up in something or other. In that case, it's proper enough that if you put it on the mizbech, you don't bring it down. Those are being included. And you're going to exclude as being totally no good, that which is pasul already from before. There was already a problem even before it was brought into the temple courtyard. It was already an invalid animal, and therefore those you cannot put them on the mizbech, and if you do put them on the mizbech, you have to bring them down. Okay, that's the end of the baraita. Now here's the proof. Katani mihani tanin lemata shenetanan lematla ulemala shenetanan lemata vela palig Rabbi Yehuda mai ta'ama la mishum dekate mizbeach ushma mina lo ya'asfenu. So you see that in the continuation of the baraita, the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, he does mention the case that if it was supposed to be placed below the red line, then you put it above, or above and you put it below. So Rabbi Shimon thinks that, okay, you leave it there. And Rabbi Yehuda has no disagreement, which means that Rabbi Yehuda would also say that you leave it there. Why would you leave it there if you put the sprinkled in the wrong place? Is it not because the mizbeach absorbs it? In other words, it's not the same as the floor. A floor does not absorb it, the mizbeach absorbs it. Not literally absorbing the liquid, but rather we mean that is it considered sprinkled? And therefore, can you take it back or not? If it goes on the floor does not absorb it, meaning it's nothing. The putting it on the floor is not significant. Therefore, if it goes on the floor, you can pick it up again and then continue to do it. Unless it's gone and absorbed in the floor and you can't get it at all. But otherwise, if it's on the floor, you can pick it up again and then you can do it. Otherwise, if you put it on the floor and then it rolls away and goes into the dirt, then it's no good and you have to bring it back down. That's what Rabbi Yehuda said. But here, he would agree that if it was sprinkled in the wrong place on the mizbeach, that you don't have to bring it back down. Why? Because even though it's not acceptable to be a kosher korban, nevertheless, it is absorbed by the mizbeach in that it's sufficiently the right place to make it now that you cannot take that blood back again. And it's sufficiently okay that, you know what, it's not the same as there being no blood at all. It's on the mizbeach. The korban will be pasul, but if you put the parts up there, you don't have to bring them down. Anyway, we can prove from here that according to the Yehuda, lo yasfenu, if this blood is sprinkled on the mizbeach, you cannot gather it back again, and that is a support for the view of Rabbi Yochanan. Amar Rabbi Eliezer Mizbeach Penimi Mekadesh Pesulin. Rabbi Eliezer says that the inner altar, the golden altar that's in the Hechal, which is used for Ketoret, and also some blood is sprinkled on it for certain korbanot, that Mizbeach Penimi, if you put something on it that is not supposed to be there, let's say a grain offering that's not supposed to be on it, but you put it on there, then you don't bring it down. That's Mekadesh Pesulin. It's pasul, it's not supposed to be there, but it makes it sanctified. Once you put it there with the avad, you can leave it there. Rabbi Eliezer, what are you teaching us? Don't we know this already from the Baraita that we just cited? That says, if something is supposed to be inside and you put it on the outside, then you leave it there. If something is supposed to be outside and you put it on the inside, also you leave it there. I was talking about blood that's supposed to be outside and you put it on the inside, then it's okay. Then you leave the korban will still be valid enough that you can leave the parts of the korban there. So don't we already know that? No. If I only had that baraita, I would say that it only applies to blood, because blood is something that is fitting for the golden altar. There are certain korbanot that you put blood on the golden altar. So therefore you could say, blood that was supposed to be on the outer altar, but you put the blood on the inner altar. So even if it's going to be pasul, the korban, nevertheless, okay, it's good enough that it will be sufficiently okay that you can leave the rest of the korban that you put on top, you can leave it there. That's regarding blood that you put on the inside or supposed to be on the outside. That, okay, you can. It's b'diavad will say it can stay there. It's acceptable. But if a kometz, you take a handful of meal offering, which you never put a meal offering on the inner mizbeach, so it's not fitting at all. I might think, no, this is totally wrong category. You never put it on there. If you put it on, I might have thought you should take it off. And therefore, the Rabbi Eliezer gives us a chidush that not only blood, that's on the wrong thing, but also a meal offering that you put supposed to be on the outside. You put it on the inside, mizbeach. Okay, you could leave it there. Metibeh, challenge to that from a baraita. Ketoret zara shala legabe mizbeach tered. Shen lecha mekadesh pesun mizbeach chison bara'u lo chison in penimi la. Ketoret, a wrong ketoret. Ketoret, we're assuming right now that this is ketoret that was not supposed to be on the inner altar, and you put it on the inner altar, you take it down, because this concept of making kodesh something that is pasul, so you could leave it there, that only applies to mizbech hachison, as we saw before. All these things that are problematic, if you put them on the mizbech hachison, then they become kodesh, and you can leave it there. That's only true for the mizbech hachitzon, where it's fitting. It gets other things of that type, fine. But chitzon but penimi la, that means that the inner mizbeach, if you put something on there that doesn't belong, then it's out. You have to take it off. So this seems to be a challenge against Rabbi Eliezer, and that would mean that if you put something on the inside of his bech that doesn't belong there, then it has to come down. Taris hachi ketoret zara shal talim mizbech cheson tered. No, explain this baraita differently. If you have ketoret, a foreign ketoret that was supposed to be on the inside, but instead you put it on the outside mizbeach, then you bring that down. Why? Because the outside mizbeach can only sanctify things that are pasul for items that otherwise it usually gets. But the outer mizbeach doesn't take ketoret, and therefore it doesn't have the power to mekadesh something pasul that it doesn't usually have. If it's animal or blood, which it gets other types of animal flesh and blood, fine, that mekadesh pesulin, but not for ketoret, because ketoret only goes on the inside mizbeach. However, the pinimi ben ra'uilo ben she'en ra'uilo, my ta'ama hay rispa v'hay keleh sharet. But the inner altar, the golden one, that can sanctify pesulin, whether it's something that usually goes on it, like ketoret, or something that doesn't usually go on it, like a mincha offering. Why? The inside one is more powerful. Why is the inside mizbeach more powerful than the outside one? Because the outside one, it just has the status of a floor. It's connected to the ground. It's part of the ground. And we saw actually, because it's part of the ground and the ground is sanctified, technically you could burn things even on the floor of the temple courtyard. So the mizbech only has the status of of sanctified flooring, which is not as holy as the golden mizbeach, which is a kles sharet. It's a movable item, and that is a higher status of kles sharet. And therefore, the mizbach hachitzon can only sanctify something pasul if it's a type of thing that usually would go on it. Then it can stay on there, but not a ketoret that doesn't go on there. Whereas the inner mizbeach is more powerful, and that can sanctify anything, even a meal offering that's not supposed to be on it, that goes on it, still is sanctified. And in that way, we answer the challenge against Rabbi Eliezer's ruling. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.